I'm Fiona Graham, and I'll be reading two short excerpts from Elin Anna Labba's book, Herrarna satte oss hit. The title can be translated as Our Lords and Masters sent us here, or possibly as The Powers That Be sent us here. It tells the story of the North Sámi families who were forcibly relocated from the Norwegian coast and the far north of Sweden to points further south in Sweden in the 1920s, 1930s, and even later on. The people who were exiled included members of Elin Anna's own family. In the extracts I'm going to read, she depicts the journey south through the eyes of a young Sámi man called bággojohtin Fiona. The title of the chapter is Gaskaya Vosta in Volga. I will not travel towards midnight. Fiona thrusts the pole down through the mantle of snow. It is barely knee-deep. The ground is hard, frozen, but not icy. Up in the mountains, where it's been blustery, there are dark patches of snow-free ground. Right good forage, that is, he thinks. This is the first winter for several years that the ground beneath the snow hasn't been sheathed in ice. Spring is likely to come early, everyone says so. March is at hand, Maria beaiv mannu, and it won't be long now till the sun begins to spread its warmth. His sleep has been restless of late. Will the ground hold firm throughout the journey? Will the spring overtake them? They should have set off earlier. They meant to start their journey a few weeks ago, in fact, but postponed the Raidu's departure at the last moment. A baby boy was born to Jona's elder brother Nilsa and his wife Gustu Inga just before Christmas. The baby was christened at home and again by the parson, but his name provided no protection. In early February, lying in his cradle, he drew his last breath. Another little winter baby. There was a sketchy question mark in the box marked cause of death in the church register. The child was far from the first infant the parson had seen die, but he was the first for Nilsa and Gustu Inga. Fiona has kept the reindeer herd gathered together on a mountainside near Niarva, and they have seen the other herds pass by. Fiona's uncle on his father's side, Margo Bjerra, has already left. Gar anta Bjerra, Josva Bjetta, Biltot, Guhturoma. They say the islands are empty now, all of Sacha and Ranesh too. The people of Suolahasat have been sent away, and there will be more. It's hard to know the truth of it. There's been so much speculation over the last year, voices whispering to keep it from the children. Their eldest brother is also among the first to start moving, but he regrets his decision at the last moment. Now he's holding fire. And he's not alone, Fiona notes. There's many supposed to be leaving who can't. Taking out his big knife, Fiona scrapes snow off the lower part of the sleds. The thick fabric of the goachti is folded up and the tent poles lashed to a sled at the tail end of the Raidu. A sooty, rather battered little coffee kettle is the last item they pack. Gustu Inga warms a smooth, round hearthstone found under a fallen pine. Pulling off her gloves, she checks the stone isn't too hot before sliding it into the children's roavgu, a woolly sheepskin sewn up like a sack at the foot end. She lifts the children in so that their feet rest on the warm stones, swaddles them, tucks them in, and cushions their heads with woolen shawls. Through the opening for their faces, you can see the mist of their breath. Tying her shawl about her shoulders, she fastens the draft reindeer's leather reins over its back and inserts her shoes into the bindings. They move along for longer stretches on some days and shorter on others, stopping wherever forage is available. The reindeer herds go first, with the raidu following in their tracks. They have to go somewhere after all. Just how far seems to be less important to the bailiff for Lapp affairs than the fact that they are leaving. What matters is their leaving. The bailiff, Mr. Holm, has informed them that everything is better further south. There is unoccupied land. He has promised them fine pastures for their reindeer. There's room enough for herds numbering several thousand. You'll receive all the help you need. If you move now, you can choose your own land. But if you hold back, you will lose that opportunity. What is left for them if they stay? Stay on, and they'll be forced to leave at some point anyway. The first time the powers that be wanted them out of the way, Fiona wasn't even born. He doesn't know anyone who has prospered in recent years. His own family have lost a third of their livestock in just a few years. Since the borders were closed, life has become increasingly unbearable. Their grazing lands have been restricted for too long, with too many reindeer on enclosed pastures. You can scarcely even reach the ground with an axe now. A few dozen kilometres to the south, a pack of 12 wolves have been hunting together. They've been breaking up the herds, isolating and separating the reindeer. One bellwether after another has fallen silent. It's impossible to live here. There's not enough land for the herds in Rostu. The reindeer will die off. Fiona and Nilse have discussed matters during the winter and decided against trying to stay on. The reindeer herd spreads out as they move onwards. They travel during the early hours and sleep during the day. Every time they stop for a rest, Margot Biera skis on to see what lies ahead. On his return, he tells them about the mountains that await them. The only sounds along the way are the barking of dogs, the clopping of hooves, and the creaking of skis. The dogs that need a rest lie whining on the sleds. The children ask where they're going. They, too, have begun to grasp that they're not heading home. From time to time, someone sings a luoti, but even the group of girls who are fondest of yoiking are unusually quiet. Margot Biera's daughters, Ella and Marga and Gar Ante Beret, are always laughing and yoiking, especially when they're among the reindeer. They yoik the mountains when they are about to move on. They yoik the people they meet. But here, nobody knows their names. No one knows the notes for these lands. But each time they finish another leg of the journey and let the herd free to graze, the girls yoik with relief. They have got through another day. The sun softens the snow, and the night freezes it to a crust of ice. The reindeer lie down to rest with their heads facing northwest. When one gets to its feet and sets off towards the north, the whole herd gets up. At night, they follow old reindeer that break loose. Fiona keeps watch on the north side. There's barely any need to watch the south side. No reindeer are inclined to head south. We never let them out of our sight, but we do lose some. Bulls and older geldings, they wander off. The females, too, turn towards the northwest. The place where they usually calve lies 500 kilometres further north. They can feel it in their bones that they're not where they should be. After 2 months' travel, they arrive at Mavas. The massif to the west reminds them vaguely of the north. It's the 1st of May, and the sun hardly ever rests now. He disappears for barely an hour or so at night. Fiona narrows his eyes in the sharp, increasingly warm light. They burn in the snow mantle's glare. Though he's pulled the peak of his cap down, it provides scant protection. They put up the goahtis. Whose land is this? Is there enough forage for them to stop here? Maybe they can see the sea from these distant peaks, whose names he doesn't know. Day by day they observe the mountains and the valleys, the land that is rapidly reappearing as the snow thaws. The patches of naked ground are sodden with meltwater, and the brooks are in spate again. When it's Jonas' turn to rest, he dries the sedge that lines his shoes by the fire inside the goahti. Their mother fetches brushwood to keep the fire going. When she sits down, her beaska rides up in folds over her legs. Her face is deeply lined, tanned and careworn. It must feel empty on her side of the goahti, yet she seldom speaks of Jonas' father. He was the very first to register for relocation. If he'd been here now, Margo Ante, what would he have had to say? Jona was 20 the first time his parents decided to move on to new pastures. Lahku could not provide for all the people living there. Leaving the district and their relatives there, they moved to Dapmovovdi. The borders were closed, and overcrowded lands have no future to offer. People exist only as long as their reindeer survive. That was his father's view. The land must be able to sustain them. Jona knows he no longer had any faith in a life in Rostu. If you want a life with reindeer, you have to try to find better conditions, try to do better. That's how I see it. If these lands will not take them in, he will travel on further. He fears nothing now. His whole body is restless. It's as if he's constantly on the move. A man who's left his lands no longer has a home. He no longer has his feet on the ground. That's how it feels to me. That man no longer belongs to the land. Margo Jona will not look back. I'll not travel towards midnight. I would rather walk on towards the day.